Still can't figure out how to get rid of that video as a person, but it's fine. Welcome back, everyone, to another conversation with the Fractional Forum. Oh, actually, when I was thinking about what is this? Is this a show? Is this a conversation? Like, what is this? And the word that I kept coming back to was gathering, which is a gathering of minds to talk about these complex business problems that exist day to day in businesses. But alas, we get so busy doing the things and executing stuff and tactical things. And I mean, like, I'm sure Carolyn has all the things to say about the like day-to-day numbers. But that's sometimes we don't stop and pause and move ourselves up to the strategic level of the conversation. So the Fractional Forum is a place where we get to do that. And if you are joining us live, we are super excited to have you because you get to participate in the conversation too. So there's this fancy chat mechanism. And if you guys would like to use the chat and share your perspectives, or if the types of things we end up talking about today are also in your realm of things that you're experiencing with your business, ask your specific questions, and we would love to bring them into the conversation. If you are joining us for the first time, welcome. If you're joining us for the second or third time, welcome back. The way we normally start the show is with a business challenge that has been submitted by a business. And I will tell you, folks, we have one for today. And if we're talking about complex problems, I think this is another juicy one. So, are you ready, panel, for today?
We are ready.
Okay. The business challenge, as it was stated in the form. So the overarching business challenge is to achieve sustainable growth. So this is a relatively new company. They've been in business for 5 years, and they have a platform that they have developed to generate what they are calling, or activating what they are calling, network effects. So we can kind of identify it as a collaboration platform, an ecosystem platform, I think is safe to say. They haven't been able to achieve sustainable growth. I think this is something that's common in the tech arena. And unfortunately, we don't have our tech representative, Keith, here with us today. But I'm sure he has seen that not just once. Some of the impacts on the business that they shared was they've had slow revenue growth with an inability to meet pre-seed investment targets. So sound like they're trying to go for a round of investment. There's been limited adoption of the platform. I'm trying to like kind of interpret this as I go, so I don't have to just read the form. Looks like they're working in kind of a partner model to do some workshops to introduce people to the platform and then get users from that. Difficulty expanding beyond a niche. There's been a strain on resources. Most of the resources are going to development, so they haven't been able to fund marketing efforts or this partner support, which seems like their sales. I'm making a lot of assumptions here, folks. I'm making a lot of assumptions. This is what happens when you fill in generic forms. But anyway, sounds like the partner funnel right now is the primary sales generation funnel. They also shared some personal well-being impacts, so that there's been increased stress and frustration from falling short on growth targets. Again, I think personally, I've felt that. Feeling isolated and overwhelmed in navigating strategic decisions alone. Probably pretty common for a one-person leadership team. And they've been starting to have doubts about the viability of the business model, which is why I think they submitted their submission to us today. So hopefully, we can talk about some things that will hopefully create some opportunities and alleviate some of those doubts, or at least give this CEO a different direction to go. Okay, so there are some previous steps taken also that they've shared here. They're partnered with a small network of entrepreneurial facilitators to promote the platform through workshops. Focused initial efforts on creating a strong niche with a targeted audience, which sounds like it might have worked, but maybe a little too well. Conducted product enhancements to address user feedback, explored networking opportunities to engage potential investors and customers. I have much I can say about networking opportunities. And let's okay, there's some additional context. Platform is designed to leverage network effects to foster innovation. Critical mass has not been achieved, so it limits the platform's ability to demonstrate the value of those network effects. The value proposition of the platform is strong, but not sufficiently demonstrated with case studies. An ROI, I think. Oh, do you guys still hear me? Oh, you're back. You're back. Now I'm on my other camera, though. That's weird. It's like, you keep looking at this screen. You should probably be using this camera. Like, no, I don't want that one. Yeah, maybe that's all I get today. You guys know, oh, there we go. I've been having all of the problems with my camera. Entrepreneurial partners play a key role in spreading the word, and funding constraints have restricted the ability to invest in scalable marketing. Okay, so that's deep. We spent like an entire 5 minutes on what I think is like skimming the surface of this business problem. Okay, I'm going to go to someone else and just like switch to my other camera. Who wants to kick it off for today?
Well, I can jump in with a few thoughts there, and I was thinking about this problem and the partner model that they're employing. It seems like there's something breaking down there. The partners aren't bringing forward the opportunities that they thought, so they really need to collaborate with those folks and find out what's going on. Are they targeting the right niche? They have a workshop model for generating leads. Are the right people there? Are the facilitators equipped to do sales? What's happening there that's driving some of that? And really understand why those partners just aren't able to deliver on the expectations. That's the first place that I would want to start.
That sounds like a good place to start. I mean, I think, like, I know I haven't been able to figure out my camera, so I might just be black screen today. But I have a lot of experience with partner programs. And I think one of the interesting things about partners, and like this whole concept of quote unquote affiliate marketing became very popular during COVID. And it's not bad to have partners, but specifically if your partners aren't partnered with you as their primary source of income, it's very difficult to get them to sell that. And it might be, I mean, if they're selling a project or if they're consultants and they're kind of packaging up things, then they might package you in with it, but it's always a very big might. And so in order to get a partner program to be very productive, it's really important to have very good clarity on what that partner is doing. And Vered, I would go to you because I feel like it's important to almost treat the partners like employees. So while they might not be on, like they might not have a salary per se, but being able to like treat them as part of that team, I think is something that is critical to the success of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And at risk of stealing Lindsay's thunder, I'm going to go back to actually clarity. So taking all the way, step back in the organization and why was this platform created? What business problem are they actually solving? And if they can answer that question, what are they trying to actually build? Future state, then that will actually bring more clarity in terms of what they're driving towards and what the goal is for everyone involved in that ecosystem, from employees, the partners, the investors. That's the baseline of creating some level of clarity, is driving that purpose, the why. And then from that, that's that foundational element. And then from that, you can really hone in on what everyone is responsible for.
Thanks, Vered, for the clarity call out. I 100% agree. I wanted to first start off by just, thanking the CEO for being vulnerable enough to submit this problem. I know Tracy paraphrased a bit there, but we had the opportunity to read all of the emotion, and burnout was used in frustration and things like that. So it's not easy to ask for help, but really appreciate the willingness to reach outside your organization for a different perspective. So thank you for that. The other thing I would say is, interestingly enough, it came up on my morning podcast walk. But the other area that popped in my head is optimism. So the definition that I heard this morning is optimism is a general attitude or a mental state that anticipates positive outcomes in the future and believes in favorable possibilities and views challenges as temporary or solvable. So if you think about that, I want to go back to clarity is 100%, but let's assume that there was clarity back when the investors came in, because you're not going to get investment without a really great idea, a lot of clarity, a lot of things backing it up. But as we know, often victim of our own success or not, context and the conditions constantly change and evolve. We're in a dynamic world, and I would really empower this business owner or owners to look back at the original intention, go back to that point where they decided, to put this product out there, and see how far they've gone off course. Some of it may be great, but I imagine at the time there was maybe a business case. There's likely, some planning meetings, a strategy, a plan, voice memos, notebooks, whatever. Go back and try to put yourself in that state. So you'll be in a state of optimism at that point, but then what was your intention and how far did you get away from it? So let's assume that they had that clarity back when this happened, a month, 6 months, 1 year ago, and how far are they away from that? I would say that's very high level, but when you think about bringing in partners, a bench, associates, advisory, whatever you have, clarity to that is super important, because that's what they're going to lock into, is the vision. You lead to a vision, you manage through accountability, which I think Tim started talking about. But on the leadership side, it's very much vision based. And as a result of that, you want to be super clear. So I would just go back, because the CEO has definitely feeling down in the dumps, alone, frustrated, questioning everything. They need a little bit of a reset, I think. I would start there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think what we said last week or even the week before is clarity drives profit. What I heard from this kind of intro of the company is we have a pretty significant revenue problem, right? And it's hard to know if it's because, the product doesn't necessarily meet a target need. But let's assume, since they've gotten investors, since they have a certain amount of traction, let's assume that they really do have a product, a platform that is truly serving a need. There's a lot of companies out there that have amazing products or amazing services, and their struggle is that they're not necessarily investing their limited resources in a way that's going to get business development, in a way that's going to get sales, in a way that's going to drive revenue. And I think that's sometimes heartbreaking to see. And that might be where we're seeing kind of some of the emotional toll that this person is, you said 5 years building a business. That's a pretty significant commitment. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you can get yourself into this state of mind that you're not being quite as resourceful as you need to be. I'll be kind of curious to get Tracy's thoughts kind of on that marketing side, but really you've got to prioritize what it is that you're tackling. And if you're a company that's taking in investment dollars, or outside investment dollars, you have to get the revenue engine working again. And you got to get it working again really, really quickly, because if you don't, you're going to have a whole cascade of other problems. We heard that they have a lot of developers. Developers don't work for free, right? They're not volunteering here. So I really think that, the owner needs to really throw all their effort into what's it going to take to make this a sticky product that customers are actually going to pay dollars for. I was watching a documentary just last week, and it was about the founder of Bumble and how, they were a tiny little scrappy company at the very, very beginning, and they didn't have a lot of marketing dollars. So they started getting creative, and they went and baked up some cupcakes and put the little logo on it and brought it to campus sorority classes. So really, what could you possibly do if you were to rally the team around you to say, what are some different pilots pilots. If we were to come up with 5 different pilots or test and learn, which one looks the most promising, let's put it in place and let's get the revenue taps kind of on and going. Because if you don't solve for money coming in the door pretty quickly, you're not going to have those lead indicators that investors are going to be willing to put more money in. So I think you got to prioritize all these problems, but you really got to find a way to start bringing dollars in the door so that you don't create a bigger problem. Tracy, what are your thoughts? What have you seen for a company that's kind of like, sometimes I think people throw up their hands and they say, oh, we don't have marketing dollars, so we can't do marketing. But I've got a feeling that you've got some creative solutions there. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned it, Carolyn, because for one, I'm sorry, folks, my camera is not cooperating today, so you just get my voice. But there's so many things that you can do from a marketing perspective that do not cost a lot of money. And I do specifically think for organizations who are in the tech arena, a lot of times they interpret marketing as digital advertising. And in order for digital advertising to have an impact, you have to have a decent budget in order for that to do something. And so then they say well, when I have the money, then I'll do the marketing because I don't have a budget for digital advertising right now. But one of the things that I find so powerful for companies that people I don't think really think about is the power of conversation, which is one of the things that we're demonstrating here today. And if the platform has been created to solve a problem, let's start having conversations about the problem, right? Let's talk about it publicly, right? We're doing this live show. It costs, we have the paid version of Restream, but it is very negligible, the cost associated with this. You can have a free version of Restream and do this type of thing. You can pick platform now is being used in two different words, or two different contexts. But if you pick a platform to have a conversation on, you can go on to social media with a free account and start that conversation. You can start it with a post. You can start it with a live. You can start it with an audio room. You don't have to go big with a podcast and all of these things right off the hop. You still have the opportunity to create those conversations. And especially in this scenario, why not get the partners involved in those conversations, right? If the partners are actually on board from we want to accomplish this from a vision mission perspective, then let's get them in the conversation. Let's ignite ideas about how we can generate new leads and find new places where those people might be. Now I feel like I'm kind of diving into the sales piece. So Tim, I wanted to throw it back to you at that point and just say I think a lot of times too, people consider conversation sales. I like to consider them marketing. But where's kind of the overlap or where could that transition into addressing the revenue problem, as Carolyn called it?
Well, conversations are so important, and having different perspective, different points of view around a problem are so important. You want to make sure that you have that clarity that Lindsay talked about at the start. And I was meeting with somebody, I think last week, about writing a book. And he said, first thing you need to do is take out a piece of paper, write down why you're writing this book. Why are you doing this thing? So you can come back to that in these tough times. And when you're struggling to do something, why are you doing it? So that clarity really is important to go back. And why are we doing this? And I wonder if through the conversations that this leader's having, and the fact they're so dependent on their partners for that revenue generation, are they listening to too many voices? And are they just moving away from that clarity and that vision that they had? So do they have, Greg's asked a question here in the chat about, do they have a strategic plan to engage people? And part of that is going to be, what do I do with that feedback? I can't do everything. I have limited resources and limited availability. What aligns with the vision and the clarity that I have to go forward? And what do I put aside? And I think that might be some of the leadership skills that Verd was going to talk about next year.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that come up for me is, potentially this is the only C-suite leader in the whole organization, that's pretty lonely. And I mean, we don't know his background. Perhaps this is his first rodeo. This is potentially the first organization he's ever led, founded. So making that assumption that he has all the right skills or experiences is not helpful. So really just focusing on what does that leader need? Maybe there's some mentorship coaching that would be required to elevate leadership skills, because we know that great leaders make great companies. But it's very challenging, as we all know, to start your own business and to take care of all those aspects of sales, operations. And we're not all experts. That's why we have our forum here, to support one another. So building that community support network across the board, actually, like even from a marketing perspective, sales perspective, how do we create a community of supporters for this organization, a community of supporters for the CEO. I'm going to actually plug VMSA here, which is Mentorship Services of Alberta, an organization I'm part of, with that focus on supporting the race car driver, not the race car. So really focusing on supporting that CEO, elevating their skills, talking through all of these things that are happening in the business, and making sure that the CEO's mental health is also intact. Because there's that trickle down effect. Leaders have to put their own oxygen mask on first, or they can't support the rest of their teams. So that's something that I think needs to be focused on. And we can maybe chat about some of the things that are happening on the staff level and some of the burnout as well.
Vered, one of the things I would like to just quickly add there is I think a lot of times people assume in order to create those opportunities for the leadership is that this has to take a lot of time. But I think, it can take a lot of time if you want to give it a lot of time, but at the same time, like going for a 5-minute walk and just like letting go, or like I have a friend of mine who's a CEO who recently started meditating, who shared like how that has changed how he approaches his business. And I was like, these are things that you can do with 5 minutes. And so if you're in a scenario, and I know sometimes it's hard to look at things this way, but if you're in a scenario where you feel like you're running, and you can't take a break, but you're not getting the results, the things you're doing aren't generating the results that you want. So if you stop doing them, you're still not going to get the results, but you're also going to create more space to have that kind of time just to step back. And then you also are creating time to create something that works instead of just like continually running into the ground.
Can I just chime in? I want to go back to Greg's point. Do they have a strategic plan that engages their board, staff, funders, allies, and others? So we spent a bit of time chatting about this leader as an individual, but when I think about the power of team and collaboration, it's super important. So, well, it's great to have that figured out, your intention, where you're going, or why you're going there, more or less. Having that team, that engagement back is really, really important, right? Because it can be a recalibration metric. And then as a result, it solicits engagement. So one thing that popped up to me that when I thought about the, they were called facilitators, entrepreneurial partners. There was a few different titles that was given for those groups of individuals that are out there selling their product, speaking about their product, showing their product in workshops. Like that is part of their organization. And if it's not working, like what they're going, and I know I'm getting a little bit more tactical on this one. So if they're not having any traction, go straight to the front lines. We'll call them the front lines. They're the ones speaking to the users. Are they users? Are there buyers in that room? I'm not too sure. And maybe that's the issue, and maybe that's the pull away from those strategic entrepreneurial partners, because they don't feel like they're set up for success. Now, I know I'm speculating, but I'm just saying, those are the kind of things that can come out of that discussion of, it's not all on this CEO, this visionary. Being willing to have an open conversation with the other individuals that are involved and affected by this could be pretty impactful. And then as a result of that will solicit engagement. So, you're not alone, but don't be alone either. So I guess that's what I would say. It's great to have outside support, but you actually have intentionally built a system of others in it. So use that system, I guess, is one thing I would say back to what Greg is saying. What is the strategy? Is there a weekly cadence to do check-ins with the group? Is there back to the investors? I imagine the investor wouldn't have engaged without some sort of accountability metric, but what does that look like? Is that investor also someone who could act as a mentor? Do they have any advice, support? Just wanted to kind of speak to that, because I think there's something there to look within. And I know that can broaden the whole topic of what these facilitators are, how they're doing what they're doing, type of thing.
I see the dynamic pretty commonly where, a founder has taken funds from an investor. And of course, the investor wants to hear good news, right? We all want to hear good news, but it's oftentimes an underutilized relationship with those different investors. So investors have truly an invested interest in your success. And it's human nature that when things aren't going well, we're not hitting our growth targets, we want to run away and hide. But if you've put money into this business, what do you want? You want open communication channels. You're come see me. What can we do to actually kind of make that happen? So sometimes it's enough of put aside your ego. Yes, you're 100% accountable to your investors, but sometimes you have to kind of go to them and elicit, help, support, rally around them, instead of saying, things aren't going the way we want, let's run away and hide and just avoid their phone calls. I don't think any investor out there really wants to be ignored when things go wrong, right? So it's kind of having some of those really brave conversations to say, how do we get things back on track? How do we get the revenue engine going again? And there's a lot of pieces that kind of feed into that. But I think a founder can do that when they're in a better mental state. When they're in a resourceful state, they're going to see so many opportunities around them. But when you're kind of in everything feels like it's closing down, the pool of options that you consider shrinks, right? So you need to find a way. I think it's kind of what you were mentioning too, Barrett, is it really starts on the founder needs to, you got to look after yourself so that you can look after your business. It's largely a reflection of how you're doing and what you see around there. Curious your guys' thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, I've agreed with everything everybody is saying. And one of the things that is coming up for me from a marketing perspective is the concept of the ideal client profile, ICP, right? If there's an investor who's invested in this, if there's people who have signed up as partners, there's people who have signed on as employees, there are people who believe in this business. So there's information there to be had from an ICP point of view. And are we using that to create opportunities? So if we are doing these partner workshops, I think they were saying, are we using that to target the people who would participate in these workshops? Do we know how we can find those similar profile of people as more investors, as enterprise clients, as anything else? Because I think one of the things from a B2B perspective, and I'm making an assumption that this is a B2B platform, but it sounds like it I'm making an assumption. But for B2B platforms, there's a lot of misconception about ICPs, and that this has to be a very B2C style demographic, psychographic profile. When we're talking about B2B, and especially in investment scenarios, there's also risk profiles to take into consideration. So as an individual, as an investor, I will invest in certain things. Personally, I have a very conservative investment portfolio. I'm not one of the people who's going to go out there and be yes, I want to be first mover on this and invest my money and do the things. There's a profile of people who are like that. But there's also a profile of people who believe in network effects, in the value of ecosystem, and the value of collaboration. And what we really need to find is a combination of those two. So people who have a higher risk profile, who will take on more risk, and honestly are excited to take on more risk, but also already believe in the underlying value proposition of the organization. And so, like, how do we mash that up and then say, like, we're looking for partners who look like this, we're looking for investors who look like this, and hey, let's not say, let's look for small businesses that look like that. Let's look at enterprise level leaders who look like that, right? Because they match the profile. But I think very rare, I think, honestly, I found it very rare that people create a meaningful ICP to that level. And I think it can help in all of the scenarios that we've talked about.
I just want to
go ahead, Vered.
Call out Greg's comment here, because I think it's actually a great comment. Just talking about investing in people and empowering staff. Again, there's just so much information from the collective around you and your staff. And so where's your issue identification process in your system? Absolutely, that needs to tie into your strategy. If we look at gaining traction, it's all about issue identification, utilizing your internal processes to fine-tune things, and asking the employees what's working, what's not, what's bogging you down, what can we fine-tune so that we are able to get to that point where there is traction and you know the organization is well-oiled. So absolutely, that's something that that needs to be taken a look at as well, especially when I read that there's burnout, late hours. Why is that happening? Have we dug into asking those questions?
I think that's a really important point too, Vered, because I mean, one, the example that Greg shared about Suncor, like, this is a big organization. They've been in the industry for a while. They have worked to build what they have developed. And a lot of times I think we assume we should have built all of that in 5 years and it should just be tickety-boo by now. But this is still a building phase, right? 5 years in, especially with a tech solution and going down the path of investment like this, you are still in the building stage. And so there is going to be these like learning things, and like, would it be great if the first decision we made just panned out and we made all of the money and we sold it to Facebook? Like, yeah, that'd be great. The likelihood of that is almost non-existent. And so if we are in this building phase, let us be in the building phase, right? Let's not hold ourselves comparable to like a Suncor today. Suncor is not 5 years old. We're 5 years old. We're a completely different industry, right? Like, and while we can learn from those types of use cases, it's also important to realize that this is where we are and this is where we're still building. And this is why opportunities like this are kind of cool, because it creates a diverse opportunity to learn new things, try on new things, snazz up our partner program, maybe reevaluate if we want a partner program, right? Like, these are all of the options exist. All of the opportunities there.
I think it's so true, right? It takes time to build something. I think that what you need to look at is like, how much runway does this company have, right? How do you set yourself up that you have the runway you need to be able to make those and to kind of make those changes along the way? So again, we kind of go back to like, they have a base of software developers, right? Like, do they know what their burn rate is? Do they know how long they have to ultimately solve this problem? Because if they're going to run into like really like cash crisis in the next 30 days, yeah, it's a little bit more stressful. But if they can make some changes now to kind of say, look, if we, what do we need to do so that we give ourselves a long enough runway so that we really have the chance to be able to truly give this a shot? In my experience, I find things always take longer than you expect, right? It's like, oh, put it together, it'll take no time at all. And then in reality, it takes longer. So I think they really need to look at like, what can they do? Like, and I'll be curious, I kind of have a question, I guess, for the rest of the panel. Am I allowed to do that? Am I allowed to ask the panel a question?
Yeah, ask the question.
Founder wakes up tomorrow morning. They have, 24 hours in the day. Presumably they still have to sleep. They got a lot of problems. What are you going to do in the next 24 hours? Because there's so many things that they need to do over the next 30, 60, 90 days. How would you prioritize the next 24 hours to give yourself enough breathing space that you can then spend the next coming weeks and months kind of building your time out? I'm curious. Yeah, that's my question to the rest of the panel. What do you do?
What is the one thing you can do today so that all other things become easier or unnecessary?
Yeah.
I wonder, and there was this thread that we were weaving through everything that we just said, and the mental health of the founder and the stress, and is there a whole bunch of stuff coming at this person that they don't know where to go and what direction to do, and is it creating a little bit of paralysis? So I would say find somebody in your company that you trust, instill them as that filter, and that idea generation that you were just talking about, Baird. Put that person in charge of it and just let them filter out some of the stuff, because we talked about developer burnout and frustration and long hours. And so there's probably a lot of that coming. And the founder maybe just needs a little bit of insulation from that right now. And just still make sure that people get heard, the right stuff gets to them. But there's got to be somebody that they can help enlist to just kind of work on that. And just they're so tied into this business. This is their idea. Their finances are probably tied into this. So just find a way to create that space around you so you have time to think and strategize and deal with the things that you have to, not all of the firefighting that's going on.
So two things. I feel like Greg McGilvery, thank you for all of your
Greg is blowing up the chat.
Action on the show. I feel like we should have invited you in to sit in key spot today. So thank you for all of that. And one thing I wanted to kind of point back to, I feel like a squirrel here, having a I'm not having a side conversation. I'm reading Greg's things. And one thing I wanted to say with his point was that he mentioned that Suncor had no distinctive competitive advantage. But when I read back, I was like, both of these two companies that you pointed out were both investing in their people. So isn't that a competitive advantage? That's the only thing as I would say, is willingness to do that is pretty, at that over years ago, that is more what's going on now as a result of mental health and burnout and things like that. But maybe that was a competitive advantage when Suncor first decided to do that. And to jump off of what Tim is saying, absolutely. I 100% agree with you. Having that partner who can even take the pressure off, and this speaks to what I do, the visionary and integrator or operator thing. It's really, really important because you have a lot of pressure. And if you keep getting pulled down into the weeds of worrying about the developers, how much time they're spending. If I think about into that room where the facilitators are presenting, and those are users. So then how is that information getting back to your development team? And then how is the development team working to prioritize what's going on and all of that kind of stuff? We talk about burn rate and things like that, op costs. If we are really resource constrained, have we taken every opportunity to optimize the way we are working? So I 100% agree with Tim in the way of having that partner. Is the CEO wearing too many hats, right? So where do they even start? And maybe part of it is actually being this is what I am good at, and then this is what I am missing. And often it's right in front of you. There's partners everywhere. Sometimes they're in your company, sometimes they're out of your company. Sometimes they're on this panel. But my point with that being said is that you may need someone to come in who's worried about all the systems of how everything goes together, so you can step away and think big picture.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. One of the things that is coming up for me is, because Carolyn asked the question, what would you do if you could do one thing for the next 24 hours? And the first thing that came up for me was give the developers the day off and create a pizza party with the partners. Get all the partners in the room, order some pizza, and talk about these things. Where are we going with this? Who actually wants to work? Who wants to create the we to get us there? Because right now we haven't ignited the passion in the team to carry this from a like business development perspective. And so how can we? And I know like one of the things I know that Tim knows is that every salesperson is different, every partner is different, right? The things that will inspire them to do that work is different. And if we like all get in the room and we could actually leave that room as a we going towards the vision of the company. And I know that Greg had mentioned right at the beginning of all of his chat messages, so I'll see if I can even find it, about like, do you have a business plan? Right? Mm-hmm. Let's get aligned on the business plan. Let's get aligned on the goals and be honest with each other. Do you want to be a partner in this? Because this is what it means to be a partner. It doesn't just mean that, hey, when this is convenient for you, you can add it to a proposal of yours. This is what it looks like to be a partner. And like, how do we create the space for us to all have that space, right? Like, I would say that's also something I would hope that a partner would do, right? Just say like, whoa there, right? You need to take a day off and go to the spa. And that's the best thing you can do with the next 24 hours of your life. And I would love to be surrounded by the people who will tell me that and also will work together with me to go and get some money. And whether we're getting that from clients or we're getting it from investors. So like personally, that's what I would default to is let's spend the day creating we and identifying all of the things that have stopped us from being a we, and then we can go forward and deal with the stuff instead of just me going forward and dealing with the stuff. My thoughts.
Yeah, I agree. I think we often look below for having the right people in the right seats, but that also applies to a leadership team. And I love Lindsay's idea of that CEO taking a look at all their responsibilities and really thinking clearly around, okay, what's in the green bucket, the things that I love and I'm really good at. What's in the red bucket, like the things that actually I'm not very good at, I'm struggling with. Who can I pull on? Who's the right resource to take those items off my plate? And maybe, what's in the yellow bucket of, okay, these are the things that maybe I'm okay at, don't love, not passionate about, probably shouldn't be doing long run. And let's build a plan to get some resources for that.
If you think of
leveraging all those around you, even looking at the partners and going, okay, do we have the right people? Do we have the right partners? Because this is what we need.
Mm-hmm.
As you're saying it, I was like, yes, I totally, like, I was just like, I had to jump in there. I totally 100%. But it totally makes me think of Steve Jobs and Barack Obama. They're trying to eliminate the number of decisions they make. So they're always like, they used to always wear like basically the same costume, the same outfit every single day, because they're trying to limit the number of decisions you're making. So even if you're more than capable of making a decision on, coding developers do this or do that, like you're using up some of your limited cognitive bandwidth on those type of decisions. So I think it's like you need a mantra of like, what is my highest ROI? Like, what is the highest ROI on my time? And it's probably going to be strategic planning and strategic thinking and deep thought around it, and then activating the we and activating the people around you. And though you might be very good at making, tactical decisions around, the office floor plan or whatever that happens to be, like you've got to limit the decisions that you're capable of so that you're focused on the decisions that are going to make the biggest impact and the biggest outcome there.
I read a stat once that said humans reach decision fatigue by 2 p.m. in the afternoon. So like thinking about like deciding what to have for breakfast and deciding what to wear and deciding when to do this and when to do that and deciding what coffee you want at Starbucks. And like, we don't often recognize that there's a lot of decisions that we make in a day. And so it's actually really interesting because one of the things that I've started doing is just how can I make the important decisions earlier in the day and leave other things for later. So if I can like create space to go for a walk, then maybe I could do like creative things later in the day. Mm-hmm. But if I also set myself up for success to know like, hey, we live in a world of content. Marketers aren't helping the scenario in most cases. We're bombarded by decisions to make all the time. And if we're also not cognizant of those types of things and try to take that into consideration when we're planning our day, like maybe a management meeting or an all hands meeting at 5 p.m. isn't the best option because pretty much everybody is going to be decision fatigued at that point. And then you're either getting like, oh, fine, like let's just do that, right? Because we need to make a decision. And I don't think anybody thinks that those decisions are the optimal decisions. But if people aren't going to be able to sit and have a conversation about it, and we're talking about doing something like creating a pretty drastic shift, we want to do something different tomorrow than we're doing yesterday, because what we're doing yesterday is not taking us where we want to go. We have to get creative. And if nobody brings any ideas to the table, then we're not really great getting creative.
I just wanted to kind of speak to something that Greg brought up here. Tracy, if you want to throw it up there, it's just because we are the Fractional Forum, I think it's a great opportunity to take a moment to speak about Fractional. Greg mentioned something, consultants often deliver strat plans and big bills to CEO that employees don't own. So I love that in the way of a fractional is typically fully embedded in the organization. And often, I think I can speak to pretty much everyone in this room. We start off with an assessment to get a current state. And through those assessments, there is touch points to every level of the organization as a result. And then by being fully embedded in the organization, there is the opportunity as the context and conditions change, to change, the strategy plan is the one thing, but being able to iterate based on like feedback loops and things like that, and then having ownership with employees and teams, leaders of teams and things like that. It's funny. I feel like Suncor and I are so aligned. I never worked for Suncor, but some of the stuff that Greg has said is a lot of the things that I believe and value deeply about really, there's two things I believe in life. And I actually believe this is like beyond even business. Our ability to reach our highest potential is limited by our ability to solve problems and be leaders. Right? So, and think of being like a leader. You're a leader when you're making decisions. Tracy, you're a leader by the fact that you have taken that feedback loop of how you're feeling like decision fatigue by a certain time, and you're recalibrating your actions as a result. That is being a leader. We are leaders of ourselves. We are leaders of others. Why we are here is we are helping develop other leaders, right? That's, a leader can see first and see far, but we are constantly trying to cultivate that in others. And then obviously solving problems, super, super, super important, because if we don't get to the root causes of these things, then we're just solving the surface things. So just something to think about. I wanted to kind of put that out there as like a fractional professional, and if any of you want to jump on and add to that. But I think that is like a clear difference between like a standard consultant model and what a fractional does provide.
I want to just quickly share Greg's comment on that because I thought this was so great. Embedding is good. We develop strategic capacity in our clients and then we leave. And I think that is something that's so critical from a fractional perspective that people don't really understand, because their historic experiences with management consultants who take the capacity with them when they go, right? Like I don't embed strategic capacity in your organization. I own it. And when I go, it goes with me. And I think that's a big difference between the industry of management consulting and how it is structured, and how a lot of fractional, even if we are calling ourselves consultants, the fractional capacity is about I'm not here to make you dependent on me, right? I'm here to help teach you how to be strategic about these things and enable the people within your organization to run with it and want to help you and want to contribute actively to the company growing. And I know specifically from my perspective in marketing, people get into marketing because they want to build relationships. They want to share stories. They want to participate in part of a community, and they want to drive value for a business. And quite honestly, a lot of businesses are not allowing their marketers to do that, which is frustrating. But the point is that with the right intention, you can, right? So if what would it look like to embed the strategic capacity into your own team instead of always being dependent on an external resource? I mean, I always think that is an amazing thing to work towards. And while it might not be specifically relevant for the use case we're talking about today, improving, I mean, it still can be, right? Because improving your strategic capacity at any point in the journey is always good. So just wanted to share that.
I just want to add to that too, and along with developing the strategic capacity, I think about capability too. And I think that's part of where the embedding comes to the real value is you're helping to build those capabilities within the people that are there to put that strategy into action. And too many times we as consultants we would develop strategic capacity and hope to put it into action. And as Lindsay knows, I say many times, hope is not a strategy. So part of the fractional is helping to put that into action, making those rhythms happen so it becomes part of what they do every day and not just another binder on the shelf of a collection of strategic plans from over the years.
Yeah, and the other thing, just because, with the conditions being so dynamic, the teams that you are developing and the leaders that you're working beside, they are learning how to take that strategic plan and implement it in real life, right? Like that's the thing. It's great from the outside to have all these ideas, right? But when how many times have you heard about it that someone went to a quarterly workshop and they come back and they're so excited and they want to do all this stuff and it's always at the end of the week, of course. And then on Monday morning, they get back to work and their phone's ringing. There's a lineup out the door. And they're like, how do I actually do that with all the things that are happening in my day to day? And that's why the fractional and the embedded. And so it's taking the strat plan, bringing it in, working, adding capacity, growing capability, and doing it continuously for a period of time until it's no longer required. And likely there's an offboarding plan. A succession plan is like another traditional way, right? I'm part of an organization currently that the goal would be to get the operations manager up to that COO level before I offboard from the company. So it is like a really great solution that's available now.
Absolutely. All right. Okay, well, let's do kind of like a round of wrap up here because we talked about a lot of different things, which we always do on this show. But team, for our submission today, what and I mean, we kind of touched on it with Carolyn's, like, what could you do in the next 24 hours? But based on all of the things we've discussed, let's round robin. What's one thing we think this CEO could do to maybe feel a little bit differently about the scenario tomorrow? Who wants to go first?
I'm going to start with you're not alone and ask those around you for help and ideas and problem identification.
Awesome. Do we want to just go around the visual room here? We'll go Lindsay, Carolyn, Tim, and then me because I'm a black hole.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, like, go back to the intention, whether it's intention of when the business 5 years ago, just go back deep dive back to that place, or back to the intention of when you brought on this new platform that was your strategy to scale. Just go back to that place, like literally in a way of like I said, notes and things like that, and just we're either winning or we're learning. And not to say that this isn't winning, but there's lots of learning here over the time. So there's a lot of things between that original investment and intention to now that can be like filtered through maybe finding some root causes of some things where there are things that weren't solved along the way that potentially there's lots of like forks in the road, and you choose a path based on the information you have and the assumptions you make. But this is a great opportunity to do a reset. So I go back to that moment of intention that Tim talked about, like with the writing in the book, like that why. So go back to that.
Absolutely. You guys know, or will soon know, I love the like, what's your sticky note? What's your mantra? What's your question? So I think grab your little sticky note and you've got yourself 2 questions. You've got what's the best use of my time and who can help? And keep going back to those questions. And as they say, the brain has that reticular activating system that as you're asking yourself those questions, you'll start to look around and kind of say, okay, what should I be doing? Who could I leverage? Whether it's, there's so many different people there. So keep going back to those. What's the best use of my time and who can help with this?
And I would just say, to add on to what everybody said here, is that clarity gives you the guide, the guidepost to where you want to go, and be open to conversations, different opinions, different perspectives, but you have that intention as a filter, and it can help you decide, what do I need to absorb and what do I need to just put aside for now? There might be great ideas, but it doesn't align with where we're focused and what we're doing. Put it aside. Don't try to do everything, because in a crisis, that sometimes the what you want to default to is just trying to juggle everything. Just cut it down, focus, but be open to some different opinions to help just shift that direction a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing a lot of consistent themes in the kind of work smarter, not harder category. But one of the things too, and I mentioned it earlier, the central question in the book, The One Thing, is actually something I've been intentionally creating a habit around for the past 3 years. And the question is, what is the one thing I can do right now that makes all other things easier or unnecessary? And being able to look at that way, and quite honestly, to build a habit of that question, whether that's in like your personal life or in your business, it's so powerful to just be able to let go of the things that aren't working. And like, let's just focus on one thing that works today, and we'll develop more things that work as we go. And one other thing that just came up for me when you were sharing, Vered, is this concept of let yourself be supported, but also if we want to talk about a partner, whether that's a like contracted partner or just a partner in conversation, be a partner too, right? You gotta welcome that. You gotta encourage people. You gotta open yourself up to being a good partner. And what does it look like for you to be a partner if we want partners to contribute to us as well? It's a we activity. I am just personally a huge believer in that the faster we can get to we, the faster we can go and accomplish things. So with that, we are right up on time again today. This is us exploring, can we do a shorter show? Just kidding. This was not us exploring that. I want to thank everybody, especially Greg, and all of his like wonderful insights in the chat. We didn't even
shout out to Greg. Yeah.
Nearly all of them. So if you are watching in any, especially on LinkedIn, like go and check out all of Greg's awesome comments too. And he has tons of knowledge in the strategy arena. So a great resource for connecting. Thanks to the panel for today. We did miss Keith because I'm sure he would have had some insights from the IT perspective. So if our friendly CEO who submitted the problem is watching this either on replay or live, then make sure to connect with Keith as well. I'm sure he has tons of other things that can add some more perspective to what you're looking at. He is our IT guy. So not just our IT guy, he's the IT expert. on the forum. So connect with him as well. Thank you everyone for hanging in there with my black hole status for today. And we're going to be here same time next week. So if you have a business problem that you would like us to open a can of worms on next week, we have a website where you can submit that. It's thefractionalforum.com. And if you're interested in being a guest on the show, also reach out to one of us. We are always, I know one of the things that Greg shared is having even more robust fractional panel talking about strategy. He mentioned legal as well. Like all of that is welcome. We would love to hear some more voices as well. So if that's something you're interested, reach out to one of us and we'll get you scheduled on a future episode. And with that, thank you for sharing your time with us today.